Okay, so we are here again with another Q&A. If you'd like to just tell us who you are and which film you worked on and your role in the film, please.
My name is Margo, and I played the main character Grace in The Writing Box.
My name's Natalie, Giorgio, and I help produce The Writing Box.
Great. Louis Holder, the filmmaker of Cinema Now.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have a round of applause, please. So, can I ask you two first, how did you start working together on The Writing Box?
Us two?
Yes.
Oh, well,
We're
she
related.
got pregnant with me.
Okay.
We've kind of known each other for a while.
Yes, for a while.
But yes, no, she's and yes, Tiana, the director, was a friend of my mother's, and my mum actually helped her get into cinematography, I think, and she came over to my house, to our house for like an evening, and she said that she was working on this thing, and she's like, oh, there are going to be some schoolgirls in it, so do you want to be an extra? And I was like, I get to work with you, because I like drama, but I've never done anything before, and I just thought I'd be on stage for a couple lines, but then it...
Oh, I should probably pick up, she's too modest, but she said, you know, I know she's your kid, so I'm not promising anything, but she did, you know, I let her read some stuff and it was quite good, but she'd have to take time off school, and it was all very, you know, like, I won't give it to her if she's no good and not right for the part, so just don't be offended, I don't want it to come between us. I was like, no, it's fine. And then she beat, you know, the other kids who were up for it, who all had agents, and, you know, she doesn't have an agent and all that. And it was a really amazing experience, and like our kids are extras, and you know. But Tiana's really sorry she can't be here. She's quite heavily pregnant, and in Italy at the moment. But yeah.
How did you start writing? How did you start collaborating with the writer in the first place?
Well, Tiana actually directed and wrote it, so it was based on Geraldine McGorian's book, and it was like a compilation of short stories. And then Tiana took inspiration from that and kind of blended together kind of elements of The Secret Garden and Little Princess and the whole Shirley Temple thing, which was appropriate in terms of the era of the book and the setting. And so I was kind of roped in kind of inadvertently, because I have a history in like cosmetics and makeup, and I'd done lots of like events and like marketing and things like that. And so she said, oh, would you like to help? And it was all very small budget, because Tiana works at Newcastle in the art department with the Wilson sisters, you know, the artists. So this was like a scholarship project, and it was something that she really wanted to do as a passion project of her own. And we all just kind of pulled together and did it, and I cooked for the crew and just did everything really with them. So.
Wonderful stuff. Louis, so I know you very well, Louis. We need to disclose that. Louis and I are friends, and we met at Deptford Cinema.
Sort of fellow film organisers, aren't we?
Absolutely, yes. So I know the answer, but tell everyone else, what inspired you to make Cinema Now?
Oh gosh, probably thinking about what was happening to our buildings, our sort of meccas of cinema during the pandemic, I reckon. About, you know, obviously a lot of people are focusing on making films, about whatever stories that they want to make, and that's fantastic, but also what's happening to the places that we want to see those films in, cinemas, you know, theatres, venues, alternative screens, kind of places where, you know, we wouldn't think that a cinema could inhabit, but actually it does. So something that, you know, I just felt close to, obviously, having studied film, making films. So, you know, what better way than just kind of procrastinate and sort of turn up with a camera, sort of head round central London, the West End, Soho, and then just, you know, shoot some films, shoot some cinemas.
What? How did you choose which cinemas in particular that you used for the project?
Yeah, there was a very strict criteria. They had to be sort of distinctly independent. They couldn't be kind of chains, or, I mean, we had a couple of examples where they were chains, but then we wanted to kind of pose the question, you know, what is independent film? Is it in the programming? Is it in the structure of the cinemas and how they operate, or is it within the audience type? And, you know, is it a kind of a sort of an audience that wants to sort of seek out those kinds of films rather than sort of commercial, you know, your Odeons, your Views and Cineworld. So that's that sort of thing. So, you know, posing a few contradictory kind of questions about what venues they are, but they're distinctly independent, most of them anyway.
And the decision to shoot on on the equipment that you did. Tell us about what equipment it was and what informed that choice.
Yeah, so we shot on Super 8 film, so Super 8mm kind of Kodak Vision 3 stock. Sort of, I mean, that's sort of what I kind of, I guess, grew up with, sort of being documented on as a child, and also learning at film school. You know, 8mm film's great and 16mm fantastic. So a bit of a sort of celluloid nut in that regard. So I guess, yeah, I mean, film is fantastic, and I wanted to sort of make a case that it could actually be more accessible than it is currently. There's a massive sort of shortage and a global kind of problem when it comes to actually film supply. It's in some ways a dying trend, a dying medium. Obviously a lot of this is normally reserved to a lot of the kind of big titans of cinema, like, you know, your P.T. Andersons and your Tarantinos, but actually, you know, with this film there's actually a case to be made for actually shooting on film, and it's Super 8. It's the size of my finger literally, and it was blown up to that size of the screen. It's kind of hard to believe.
What was the camera on
it's the Bell & Howell 1239 XL, not a particularly well-known one.
Nitso S800 is that? That's going back about
Say again,
30
sorry?
years. Raw Nitso S800.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I started with. That's donkey years.
Great. I mean, that is the Derek Jarman classic, isn't it? That camera.
Yeah, it's a classic. We
Yeah.
invented the cathode ray tube, and we invented these things.
This is it. Yeah, the S800 is a classic of Super 8. Yeah,
Question to you,
great input.
Question to you, Margo. How did you work with the other actors on the project? Did how did you build those relationships before the cameras rolled? Did you do any particular work?
Yes. It was more close. It was more close to when we started filming. For a while, I didn't know if I would get it. It took a while to secure venues and meet people. But Fahana, who plays Raisa, we were really good friends. It was funny because she's 10 years older than me, and we just got on like House on Fire. And while we were filming in Italy, posing as India, Fahana, my mum and I, we were all in the same sort of rented house, and we would have breakfast together and spend loads of time in each other's company. It was really important, I thought, for our roles because they've got such a conflicted friendship on stage. It's not even a friendship, it's more like they're frenemies. They're sort of testing each other and seeing how far they can push. So I worked mostly with Fahana, but Eddie's here, and we worked with Eddie as well, who plays the chef. And we did like a table read at Tiana's flat, and so we got to know him there. And then the other schoolgirls, I met only for a day, but we all were like eating together, and it was quite like a classroom environment. I think that's that person, and I don't know if we have that one. Well, yeah, that's her. So yeah, we got to know everyone before and after, and it was an interesting experience because of my first. I'd never shot anything or done a lot of professional anything before.
Okay, so next question on that note then, how was it to see yourself on the big screen?
Like really, really wonderful, but at the same time completely scary, because I mean I've seen it lots of times on laptops, and I thought I was worried going in. I'd just have seen it so many times that I would be blinded to watching it with any sort of perspective. But it was like people were saying before, that it's a completely different experience to have no distractions and to just sort of be black around the screen and completely focused. And I think it was the first time I sort of accepted it as a viewer and not as I'm going to be doing that. That was difficult, and I like that bit. So it was more interesting and a completely different experience because I've only ever seen it on a laptop and never on something of this scale.
How about you, to Natalie? How satisfying is it to see your work?
Oh, I think it's beautiful. I mean, when we said we'd done this, everyone was like, oh, you know, you're related, of course you're going to think it's great, and it's going to be really amateur, and they were thinking kind of bad Blair Witch. And then we sent it to a few friends, and they were like, actually it's really beautifully shot, and it's really atmospheric, and it's like well edited, and they were kind of surprised. So when we saw it like this, it kind of took our breath away. And also she plays like a total sociopath, so it's really weird to see your kid.
I promise.
No, she's really nothing like that. Like the staff, they would go cut, and then we would all start laughing because she just had to be so mean all the time. So that was really, it was a real experience, and to come and see it here and have other people witness it is obviously an honour, you know.
And you, Louis, I know you're an absolute nut for cinema. We
Yes.
had hours and hours of conversations about films we love. What's it like seeing your own film in an environment like this?
It's great.
Especially a film about cinema as well.
It's great. It's slightly, there's a bit of sort of Inception sort of vibe, where it's kind of like a cinema within a cinema within a cinema. Exactly that. And it's just, it's quite poetic. It's quite beautiful. And it's really for the sort of the filmmakers really to kind of appreciate. I hope that people kind of go away from it and think, oh, that's a venue that I'd like to kind of either show my film at if you're a filmmaker.
Took notes.
Yeah, you took notes, very good. As filmmakers, I think everyone should be taking notes of places that you can show your work, and also go and visit as well and just kind of check it out, because I think it's one of those things that we just forget. I mean,
made me kind of sad.
It's sad. It's meant to be. I guess people can take away whatever they want from it, and it's like sad is one of the things, and it can also be a happy reminder that there are all these places. Sadly, some of the ones in the film don't exist anymore in their current way as they were depicted. But yeah, I mean that's the way of life, isn't it? They just come and go. Yeah.
Some really beautiful buildings, not just cinema, the outside of the buildings and the way that you shoot architecture is fantastic. Was there any audience questions at this point?
Congratulations to all of you. It was both of them beautiful, really, and truly. I have a question to Louis regarding the cinema now. Thank you so much for that. I recognize some of them as well. I live in Southeast London, so yeah, and unfortunately, Deptford Cinema doesn't exist anymore. And regarding the picture itself, because you depict just the front of them, I'm wondering, didn't you feel tempted to go inside? And the same as you share this intimate reflection of the people who share their opinion about, the cinemas and what does it really feel to them to watch the movie in the cinema. Did you feel tempted to go inside, the same, show the inside of it? People who created these places as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. There's a real sort of, there's a short practical answer to that, is that they were all closed at that point during filming. That was the sort of short of it and everything. During the first part of 2021, I think cinemas were allowed to reopen, I think on the 15th of May last year, but they were closed during the time of filming, so that's the practical answer. But the more introspective, interesting answer is probably yes, but I think at the same time there's something kind of nice to be said about being a sort of passerby and just sort of seeing these sort of venues kind of sort of standing still, and what actually happens to these buildings kind of beyond audience participatorship, if you will. It's not really a word, but it can be a word here. Just kind of sort of getting involved and sort of being inside them, I think might have sort of taken us away from seeing them as a sort of iconic venue. Like we all know, or some of us I guess know in the indie scene, of like what the Prince Charles Cinema looks like from the outside. That's a really famous venue, as is the Genesis. So I guess probably they would look a little bit less like cinemas, maybe, to some people, if they were on the inside. But that is also a very good question.
I was going to ask about Genesis, because that's where Genesis is.
Oh, there you are.
Hello. Hello there. Thing is, because I love Genesis, because I actually used to go there as a kid when it was the Coronet, when it was the 80s, so before it shut down and then it got revamped and it's been Genesis. So I was just wondering, if you had any preferences, like what your favourite cinemas were, or did you have any favourite cinemas when you were growing up to go to?
Oh gosh, I guess maybe all three of us can actually probably answer this. I guess we could probably open it up to the floor, because I think we all have different favourite cinemas. It sort of depends on what films they're showing, because they all sort of show different things. I think probably the Prince Charles has a bit more money, so they can kind of book whatever film they want than the Genesis, quite frankly. I don't know. I mean, they're all good in different ways, to be honest. I'm not going to say the Prince Charles, because everyone says the Prince Charles. But I don't know. Probably the World Cinema, that one that's kind of like a sort of alleyway that we saw in the film.
Oh, well, yeah.
Which is underneath some train tracks in Loughborough Junction, southeast, and that can also be sort of hired out very cheaply by filmmakers to show their work. It's a nice. They do sort of good little offbeat stuff here and there.
Yeah.
I'd say the World Cinema. Yeah.
The Genesis.
Yeah. I can't say Deptford Cinema because I volunteered there and stuff before it closed alongside Peter, so I'm not allowed to say that one. But it would be Deptford, obviously.
Yeah, it's actually funny because when Genesis shut in the 80s, or like at the end of the 80s, 89, so Scandal was the last film. I used to remember going past it in the poster, and then he used to come here when it was in the 90s, and he wasn't because there was nowhere else to go. So it's all self, but that's interesting, isn't it?
What are your favourites? Cinemas.
Oh.
Do you have any favourites?
I used to, I mean, it's
Or like that you go.
well, they're mainly chains, I suppose, because the Curzon, for me, when I was growing up, I did languages at university.
Yeah.
My mum was a foreigner, my dad was a foreigner, and so they would take me to see European films, like, with subtitles when I was about 15 up in town.
Brilliant.
You know, and then The Everyman, which used to be On the Hill, and all those.
Yeah.
And the Phoenix is not far from where we
the
live.
Phoenix, yeah, great.
Oh, I unfortunately haven't been to many odd cinemas or sort of independent cinemas. Mostly, we watch most films at home, but when we go to cinema, it's usually the Odeon or Everyman or the chains. So I can't say that I've got a favourite cinema.
She's obsessed with Cinema Paradiso.
So much.
Yeah,
I don't know if
film.
I'm allowed to say fictional places, but I'm madly obsessed.
Paradiso's enough, we can all transport ourselves there.
Yeah.
So,
You have a list now to work the way through from the Cinema Now ones. I wanted to ask a question to each one of you. What is something you learnt making this project that you'll take forward with you? Louis, do you want to start first?
Gosh, probably sort of, I think a lot of stuff that I made before Cinema Now was kind of had a sort of an agenda, or a lot of it was fiction. I think it was about sort of a sort of reflection on the pandemic, about thinking what it is that we want to be and what it is we want to make, and thinking about what is, just being true to ourselves rather than kind of coming at it with a sort of specific agenda, or this is going to be a sort of, dare I say, a sort of a festival film, or kind of like something with a, I don't know, just sort of thinking about something I'm passionate about, and then just really, going for it, I think, and then just committing just to that and nothing else. And that was literally my 2021 was that. So, yeah, I reckon so.
I am not really like a film veteran. I mean, I've always been the viewer, really, and more of an organiser, and that was my capacity in this film. So to witness it firsthand and how much work goes in and every detail, and then seeing that, looking back and remembering that I had to kind of, that skirt needed to be like this, and that curtain looked too new, and just every detail. Now, whenever I go to a film, I just think, oh my God, I mean, those poor people, they've done so much, and I just have so much sympathy and kind of respect. And I think, I always used to think writing a book was the most impressive thing. And then when you see film, you think, actually, that's worse, because it's every dimension. There's sound, there's, and then where do you stand? Where are you as a narrator? Where, how do you, literally, it took my breath away. And, we took our kids to watch one of the bits we filmed in Northumberland, that was the school. And, they were all looking, they were with a focus puller, and they just couldn't believe the mechanics of it. And that was just a huge learning for all of us. Everyone was so much more humble, I think.
I love to read and to stories, and it was such a joy to be able to so deeply go into a character and unpick all the layers and shells that make up such a complex person like Grace, because she's such a miserable person on the inside, and that's what sort of turns her into this bitter person on the outside, but it makes her so conniving as well. And just peeling off layer to find sort of the very core of her was something I've never really been able to do outside of the classroom, which is what now we're, and it's a classroom of other children. And so, Tiana and I and the other cast, we just spent hours just talking about our characters and their relationships and why they acted in certain ways. And I thought I understood, the empathy you can have for characters and their motives and all that. And it wasn't until I'd actually done something like that myself that I realised how immersed you can become in something and at the same time be a viewer.
So, final question. What are we working on next? Margo, have you got the acting bug now?
Oh, very much so, and before that, but currently I don't have anything definite. I've been talking to Tiana, being like, please let me do something. And obviously her being pregnant has, I think, put a temporary pause on things, but I can't wait to see what she does next, and hopefully my intense nagging will wear her over and she might let me like sort of smile and something. But I'd love to do acting again, and I can't wait to do more because that's my first experience and be happy.
I would be totally open to helping Tiana again. It's a big experience. It's not my usual day job, but potentially could be. So I really don't know. We're just open to it. For now, I'm just trying to open more doors for Margo because, you know, literally she was the only one who was just literally had no backing whatsoever. And you know, the photographer, the director of photography, just said, oh, you know, you've got to get her doing stuff. She's really good. She didn't fluff a line, and she's got, you know, photographic memory for lines and all of that. So it was really, really quick, the filming. And so I'm hoping that I'll at least be able to be the pushy mom that I've never been. You know.
Oh gosh, next project. There's one sort of in development at the moment, everything quite loosely in the sort of similar sort of slightly spiritual vein as Cinema Now. It's to sort of look at our other institutions and sort of have a focus on theatres next. And working title is called Playback, and it's sort of to looking at our theatres, but this time focusing on our interiors of theatres and the past, present, and future, and how what happens to theatres outside of performance times specifically. So and that'll be interesting, and that they have a soul, and that there is life beyond just when there's performances, and about how that lingers, and lots of interesting ways to explore that in sound and in sort of documentary. So something like that. Yeah.
Expanded universe. That's what I'm hearing here.
But not Marvel. Sort of.
Just last thing to say, thank you so much for coming to the festival, submitting your films, and for joining us. Can we have a round of applause, please? For